Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Sparklist, the total self-service email marketing solution for small to medium-sized businesses at sparklist.com. Welcome to the E-commerce Conversation with Pat Callahan, a weekly podcast focusing on e-commerce topics, featuring interviews with prominent people in the e-commerce space. And now let's move right on over to Pat to see who he has queued up for this week's interview. Welcome to E-commerce Conversations. I'm Pat Callahan, and today I am joined by Ken Burke, founder of MarketLive, and online, that's MarketLive.com. Ken, it's good to have you.
Hello, Pat. That's good to be here. Thanks so much for having us.
Absolutely. So MarketLive is a leading provider of e-commerce retail technology and services for selling online. So Ken, let's talk MarketLive. What do you guys do? And what is this e-commerce retail technology all about?
Sure. Well, we basically drive, we're the e-commerce engine and a lot of the creative and what I call intelligent selling, which is a term that we use here a lot at MarketLive, about how our customers actually sell online. So we're the creators of intelligent selling, the methodology, and the actual technology in which to do that. We kind of marry it all together in a really easy and a very effective way for our merchants to actually market and merchandise online. And so we run about 150 websites doing about, well over $3 billion of online commerce a year.
What is intelligent selling? How do you guys define that?
Yeah, intelligent selling, I created the term about in 1999, 2000, and it was really about, what I found was, sites then, and still sites today, which still amazes me, are as much order-taking mechanisms for companies, and they look at them as such, meaning they actually look at them as not a merchandising tool or a communication tool or a selling tool. They actually still look at them as, I take orders online. And I think actually that's the absolute wrong way to look at your website. You will not succeed in the internet e-commerce landscape by looking at your website that way. So about 7 years ago, created the concept and all the methodologies around this thing called intelligent selling, which is how do you really merchandise and talk to a customer in an effective way? How do you present your merchandise in a way that customers can find it? It's easily understood. They have a pathway of discovery to be able to get to those products, and enough information so they can actually make a buying purchase. Because again, you don't have the product sitting right in front of you. So the challenge for a lot of retailers and certainly catalogers kind of figured this out, with the print catalog, but a lot of retailers and brand manufacturers really had to come a long way in terms of understanding how to sell online. And so we really have been spearheading that effort, and for many years. But it continues to evolve, which is interesting now as we look at social networking, social computing, and the next evolution of merchandising. I actually now talk today about the difference between a merchant-driven merchandising strategy and a consumer-driven merchandising strategy and marketing strategy. And in fact, what I'm finding today, and what I often talk about, and what I'm seeing out there in the industry, is that we are becoming much more of a consumer-driven. Our customers are merchandising and marketing for us much more than ever before, and that's with the advent of social networking. And I do believe that it actually is kind of reshaping the way that online commerce will be transacted and marketed and merchandised in the future. Now, not so revolutionary. Things happen in small bite-sized pieces in our world of e-commerce and generally in the world out there. But it's going to evolve over time to be something that it actually kind of changes the model a bit about how influential other customers are. And it already is changing, actually. People aren't quite fully adapted to it yet.
Okay. I'm glad that you did bring up social networking, because I want to jump into that next.
Great.
With you. Right now it seems to be all the rage. People are absolutely talking about social networking and marketing on social networking sites. How is it, do you think, that social networking originally emerged or became a market tactic or potential marketing tactic?
Well, I think it's interesting about how people have actually, first of all, what the definition of social networking and social computing actually is still a mystery, and I can speak briefly to that as well.
Please do.
it's important to note that it is really just evolving, and I think the biggest challenge, I'll just put the biggest question mark out there for merchants, and really what I care about is merchants and their customers, right? As we frame what social networking and social computing is, how do you monetize as a merchant? How do you actually make money using social networking? And I think that's where the area. I mean, this has been around for 4 or 5 years. This isn't brand new. I've been talking about it for probably 2.5, 3 years now, and it started with very simple things like customer reviews, and still to this day, people are still kind of just figuring out how to use customer reviews in their websites, merchants and customers as well. And they equate that to this idea of a social networking kind of concept applied to e-commerce. I actually believe the vision is a lot larger, and it reaches out a lot further than just customer reviews on a website. But the question is, how do you develop content in such a way, or how do you create mechanisms for people to communicate while at the same time promoting your brand or using those tactics that we've come up with, summarized, if you will, for the industry, a series of those, which we might hit on some of those today as well. But let me just speak very quickly to two things. One, the definition, just so that we're definitionally correct, and then kind of why this shift is important might be helpful for us to understand a little bit. Social computing is actually the larger term. It's the term that really talks about putting the hands of communication and computing and doing e-commerce in the hands of the consumer, not the company. Social networking is a smaller subset of that, and it's more attributed to the social networking websites out there. So it's not that social computing is the large way that we look at all the things we can do, from podcasts to videocasts to RSS feeds to blogs and other things. Social networking is a subset of that where customers are specifically connected in a network of some sort, right? So there's a lot of things merchants can do beyond just social networking. It's just one of the pieces of the overall pie, and that's how we definitionally kind of define that. I think it's important also to note that there's kind of an importance around this, that in fact if people don't start embracing this, you will find yourself behind. Just like companies, we used to talk about 3, 4, 5 years back, if you don't embrace e-commerce in your overall strategy, you're going to fall behind as a retailer or as a manufacturer. And that's clearly come to fruition, because retailers today can't live without an e-commerce site, and certainly in my opinion, and the opinions of most retailers out there, if not all retailers out there. Social networking and social computing in the whole also you have to start embracing it. It's going to become, it's optional now, it's going to become a requirement of doing business in the next couple of years. And there's a couple of things that are driving that. One is that in fact that the value, the brand loyalty is actually decreasing, and we've seen research after research, and Forrester does quite a lot of research on this as well. What we're finding is that the brand loyalty is actually decreasing, and overall price, or what they believe is more important, becoming price and other types of things, are more important than the brand name itself. So as brand loyalty starts to degrade, you have to find other ways to actually bring your customers back to your brand, and not just price, because we all know that you can't differentiate yourself solely on price generally out there in the market. So how do you differentiate yourself in other ways? And this is one of those ways to do it, as brand becomes less and less kind of interesting. There's also just a general distrust of over merchandising. As we look at different surveys, customers aren't trusting advertising and other forms of marketing, TV, magazine, radio, other things. So how do you then start to bring customers together in such a way where they can actually trust the advertisements? And you as a merchant, your responsibility is to facilitate that mechanism. So your job as a merchant is not only to contribute to the social network, but also to provide the facilities for such, meaning the tool set. So if you're going to do a podcast, as an example, how do you solicit feedback from your customers on that podcast? How do you provide a forum for them to discuss what's going on, as an example? Or customer reviews. What tools are you providing to your end customers to facilitate the interaction and the communication between those customers, right? And that's then how you're able to kind of start to build trust in overall. Then the last thing I'll say is that the adoption rates of social networking, just in general, is also driving this need for merchants to actually jump on board. Let me just throw out a couple of quick statistics from Forrester, that in fact social networking sites like the MySpaces and the Facebooks and such, in 2006 about 10% of internet users were using those. Today, 2007, at the end of 2007, 19%. So that's a 100% increase in growth just in 1 year. Reading blogs went from 12% in 2006 to 22% in 2007. RSS feeds have gone from 2% usage to 8% usage. And listening to podcasts, as this example here, has gone from 6% to 8%. Those are just 4 factors of social networking and the increase. So those are pretty significant growth rates that people have to pay attention to.
Sure. One thing that I'm still trying to figure out, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, is what are some of the tools, in your opinion, that can be used to boost engagement and sales on a site? One of the things, and before you answer that, one of the things I'm curious about is, are people relying on the MySpaces, the Facebooks, as places where they can create their own websites, or are they relying on people who are already in that space making some recommendations for their products?
Yeah, in that particular case of the social networking of MySpace or other types of sites like that, in fact, they are, well, first of all, the merchant themselves are actually creating those pages or those quote-unquote independent sites out there on MySpace, just like actors are doing this and pro athletes are doing this.
Right.
And, of course, the folks down the street and your friends are doing it and all of that. So to exist out there in the social networking landscape, having a MySpace page, but it's different than how an individual would create it, because you are representing the company. And by the way, I always say in social networks, don't be afraid to participate. Participate. People in the social network actually want you to participate, and we tend to forget it. Sometimes we put things out there and then we don't participate in it, meaning we let the users just kind of take control of it. So I would encourage or highly encourage merchants to actually have a MySpace page as an example, and other ones as well. They can certainly put something on Facebook and certainly on other social networking sites that will get read. And what we're finding is that then the contribution of the users are both fed from your MySpace page, but they're also feeding it from other things as well. So for instance, you'll find people talking about certain brands or certain shopping experiences or certain retailers on their own individual MySpace pages. But I wouldn't rely solely on that, although that's going to happen anyway. I always use this example of go to YouTube, and I ask any merchant to go do this. Go to YouTube right now, type in the name of your company, number one, and see if anything comes up. And you'll probably find, we find about 80% of the merchants we do this with actually have a video talking about their company that they didn't post, that some other random person out there posted. They're either talking about the company, they're talking about a certain product or what have you. And if you can't find your company, look for your top 5 products on there that you might resell or sell. You'd be surprised at how many people are putting that content out. So clearly people are feeding this engine, consumers are feeding this engine in a big way. But in addition to that, you need to stimulate it as well. So I'll give an example. I'll just give you an example of a great MySpace page from one of our customers, Armani Exchange. So I think if you go to myspace.com/Armani Exchange, or do a search for Armani Exchange on MySpace, you'll see a phenomenal page that they put together. I mean, it's a spectacular example of what a merchant can do on MySpace. They've got music, they've got downloads, they've got in-store comments, and they have customers actually commenting on things like store openings or the customer's experience inside of a store and what the great shirt they found or the great sweater that they found at Armani. And they're going back to MySpace on the Armani MySpace page and making comments. Also, Armani, and I haven't checked in the last month or so, but the last time I checked had over 21,000 friends, and that's part of the vernacular of social networks, as part of their social network, if you will, as part of their, they call them friends on MySpace, which many of your folks out there know what I'm talking about
right
here. And that's growing at a rate to 500 to 600 friends a week are adding themselves to be connected to that merchant.
Wow.
That's a pretty impressive thing. I mean, they only, by the way, the 21,000, they only put this page up like 4 or 5 months ago. So this is something that has really been well adopted. And they learn a lot from this. As a merchant, they learn about what their customers are responding to and what their customers are talking about. So when I say participate with your consumers, but also take your customers' feedback and information and build it back into your own merchandising strategies. That's how you really use this information. And I believe it is a full loop. I believe that you've got to participate, you have to listen and respond as well.
Definitely, and I would wholeheartedly agree with you that as far as social media goes, if you don't get on board pretty quick, you're going to get left behind.
Absolutely.
I have a couple more questions for you, Ken. The first one is, what are some common mistakes to avoid when considering a social networking program?
Sure. Lack of, the first thing and the most important thing is lack of funding, if you will, lack of allocating the proper resources to it. I was just talking to one of my merchants. I was having dinner with them literally 2 nights ago, and they were thinking about putting a blog on. And their brand would do phenomenal with a blog. Their biggest concern was, once I put it on, and they were very smart because they already knew this before, because everybody gets excited and they go, I'm going to put a blog on, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they're like, wait a minute, I've got to contribute to this blog like every day or every week, right? I've got to pay attention to this thing. Once you put something up like that, and you probably know yourself, this is the same with the things that you do when you're doing your podcasts or communicating information out to the industry. You got to keep up with this stuff. It's a lot of work. So
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I'm seeing jobs pop up in company after company, community manager, social networking manager. Companies are now starting to hire, bigger companies are starting to hire, managers of these areas. And I have to say, if you're going to start anything in the social networking area, you have to keep it fresh. You have to keep it up. You can't just let it sit there and self-monitor itself. So you're going to have to allocate some resources to it. That's the number one mistake everybody makes. They think that, I could just start it. If you do a podcast once a year, it's not all that interesting. If you're doing podcasts and video casts, which is something we recommend on a very regular basis on an e-commerce site, and we have a wonderful site called Sur La Table. If you're familiar with the brand out there, wonderful retailer.
How is that spelled, Ken?
It's SurLatable. It's like table. SurLatable.com. Please go to the site. They have integrated into their gateway pages, their category pages, their index pages. They have integrated podcasts. So you can subscribe to a podcast right now. You can watch one of their chefs talk about it's a cooking store, a massive cooking store of lots and lots. So they can sell everything cooking related. Phenomenal store overall, and a great web presence as well. But they've integrated this education, this information about cooking and these podcasts, and they're video based, most of them, into their website, and then they continue to subscribe people to these so that they can come back and let them know about the latest updates and things like that. Phenomenal example of a merchant integrating an element of social computing into their business and new media as well.
Ken, the best part about my job is being able to talk to people like you, because I learned so much about all these different aspects, all these different online aspects that are going on online, and social media is definitely something that I'm certainly interested in. Certainly always feel like I'm a little bit behind the curve with social media. I really want to thank you for your time, and I would love to have you come on again as we see where social media is maybe in 3 months or maybe in 6 months.
Absolutely. There's certainly a lot more to talk about on this topic, and happy to talk anytime.
That's great. Thank you again, Ken. And Ken's the founder of MarketLive, and you can find it online at MarketLive.com. Thank you for your time, Ken. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this week's e-commerce conversation with Pat Callahan. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in next week for another new episode to find out who Pat will be speaking with.